The last few years when people have asked me, what is the most delicious thing you've ever eaten? The answer has been the same. It's a Scotch egg. Back in 2016, my wife and I took a much-belated honeymoon after 8 years of marriage. We spent a week in Edinburgh and about another week in the rest of the UK. All that is just the prelude to the most delicious thing I have ever eaten is a Scotch egg in Edinburgh, Scotland. We went to this really cute little sort of bistro sort of thing. We ordered the Scotch egg as an appetizer and I was blown away. It was so good. The sausage was perfectly cooked and just incredibly well seasoned. The egg itself was jammy and that Scotch egg is so good. I wish I remembered the name of the restaurant, but I didn't write it down. I wasn't that organized. This is not that Scotch egg. I didn't make that Scotch egg, so I don't know what went into it. It did inspire me to make Scotch eggs at home, and I've done that a number of times, so here I am showing you how to make your own Scotch eggs. Scotch egg is a boiled egg wrapped in sausage, breaded, and deep fried. Scotch eggs are nearly 300 years old. Supposedly they were invented in the 1830s at the huge British department store Fortnum & Mason. They were originally a sort of hand food. Workers would come by, buy one, and eat it as they were commuting or traveling throughout the city. It was something you could buy and eat while you walked. Hand food, street food, something I love learning about. Every culture has their own unique street food, so it's always interesting to see how things are different or the same culture to culture. Scotch egg started off as street food. I don't think it's really considered street food anymore. It sort of moved beyond that. Anyway, in order to make a Scotch egg, you really only need a few ingredients. You need your eggs, some sausage, some eggs for the breading, and then breadcrumbs. That all gets rolled up and fried. Super simple, straightforward, and actually pretty easy to do once you understand the science and have a few tips and tricks in your pocket. And that's what I'm going to show you today, all those tips and tricks. First thing, you want to start with good soft-boiled eggs. The black magic, the cooking wizardry of a good Scotch egg is having that still soft-boiled yolk at the center of your piping hot, sausage-encrusted egg. That's actually pretty easy to get to once you understand the techniques. Second, you need to have a good sausage. I'm making my own, and that recipe is included in this video. But if you don't want to make your own, you don't have to. You can buy sausage and use it. Just make sure when you're working with it, you get it nice and thin. You don't want a thick crust of sausage. You want a fairly thin crust of sausage around the egg. That way it can cook and it won't overcook the egg and ruin the yolk. You can use any kind of sausage you want. There are regional variations all over England. Some people will do a mixture of black and white pudding. That sounds really neat. I might have to give that a shot sometime. Some people like to use a real spicy sausage. For mine, I am using a breakfast sausage. It's just a sausage that I really like. I have a lot of nice black pepper in there, so it does have a bit of a kick, and it has just a really nice flavor to it. Then lastly, it's just about good deep fry technique and preparation. I hope you're along for the ride because this honestly is one of my favorite things to eat, and I can't wait to share it with you. I hope you make it at home. Stick around, it's gonna be great. You can't have Scotch eggs without boiled eggs. For me, specifically, that means a soft boiled egg. Boiling eggs is not that complicated, but it is something that is argued about incessantly. Everybody has an opinion, has a favorite method. These arguments have been going on for probably centuries. As long as two people have been boiling eggs, no two people have boiled eggs the same. Here's how I do it. And I'll cop to it, I don't actually boil my eggs. I steam them. Here are the things that I do to make sure that my eggs turn out the same every time. And what I mean by that is a soft, jammy yolk and an egg that is easy to peel. First, start with fresh eggs. The fresher you buy them at the store, the easier they are to peel, at least as far as I've found. Other people say the opposite. Like I said, boiled eggs are a whole thing. Second, keep them cold. These are right out of the fridge. Third, I don't boil my eggs, I steam them. If you boil your eggs, there are a lot of variables. A lot of people say, start with your eggs in cold water, turn on the heat, and bring the water up around them. Well, how much heat does the burner put out? How long does it take to boil those eggs? It's a whole big thing. Boil your water first and drop your eggs in. Well, you're going to be losing temperature immediately because the eggs are going to be dropped in and suck up a lot of that energy right away. To take out the guesswork, I started steaming my eggs, and I immediately saw dramatic improvements in the quality and consistency. Third is timing. This is much ballyhooed and argued about. For what I've done, I find that 7 to 7.5 minutes is the ideal time for boiling your eggs. I'll be boiling these for 7 minutes and 15 seconds. 7 minutes tends to be a little runny. 7:30 is just starting to get a little too firm on the outside, again, for my taste and what I'm going for. I set the timer for 7:15, and that gives me a few seconds leeway on either side. The size of your eggs will make a difference to a degree. It's not terrible, but just beware, if you get jumbo eggs, you should probably go for a little bit longer. Our target here is a fully cooked white, absolutely completely set, but with a jammy, creamy center yolk, and one that peels easily. Lastly, as soon as they're done cooking, get them in an ice bath so that they stop cooking and cool rapidly. Cooling rapidly will help pull the white away from the shell because the white will contract more than the shell. Let those cool down and stay cold for a while. I'm doing these the day before, just like I'm doing the sausage the day before. Let them sit in the fridge overnight, and when you go to peel them the next day, they will peel like a dream. At least I hope so. I may eat crow tomorrow when I finish this video. To recap, fresh eggs, cold out of the fridge, over steam for 7 minutes and 15 seconds into an ice bath, followed by letting them sit overnight in the fridge. That is how I do my eggs. That is how I get soft-boiled eggs every time. All right, like I said, keep your eggs cool, even after they've chilled in the ice bath. One thing I like to do to make sure they stay super, super cold is keep them in water, put some more ice in, stick them in the fridge. That way they will stay super cold and they will peel incredibly easy tomorrow. Start by taking some of the ice water, transfer my eggs in, top with more ice, stick this in the fridge. Tomorrow, eggs are gonna be absolutely beautiful. You may have noticed that ingredients card looks a little bit different. Nothing's measured out by weight. The key to making a good sausage is really nailing the seasonings, specifically the salt. Sausages really do need a good amount of salt. Rather than measuring things out by tablespoons or milliliters or even just by weight, I'm presenting this the way that I'm making sausages now. So I am writing this in the same way that bakers use percentages, except rather than my flour being 100% in a baker's recipe, the pork, the meat in my sausage, is 100%. All of the ingredients are, that ingredient is a percent of the weight of the pork. This way the recipe scales up and down and it turns out the same every time. It's also really easy for you to change the balance of the recipe by looking at your percentages, moving things up or down as you want. Just keep recording them, follow good scientific methodology and you'll be fine. I have 500 grams of pork that functions as 100%. All of the spices that are going into the sausage then get measured out based on the percentage they are of the pork. I need 1.5% salt, so that works out to 7.5 grams. The smallest amount that I need is 0.2%, and that's just 1 gram of sage and 1 gram of dried rosemary. A note on the pork to use. You want to get good ground pork. It should have flecks of fat throughout, and it should have a nice consistency. It shouldn't be watery. It shouldn't have just a smooth, pasty, flat texture. You want it to have good texture. You want it to have a good amount of fat. Fat is incredibly important for making sausage. If you don't have enough fat, it's going to be dry and tough. Fat gives you flavor, but it also helps keep the meat moist as you cook it. Specifically for this recipe, you probably want about 25% fat. If your butcher is making the ground pork from the pork shoulder, you're probably fine. If it looks interchangeable with ground chicken, that's not good. You're going to need more fat. You can supplement with lard or bacon when you get home, but I find it's best to be able to just buy the right ingredient from the get-go. As you can see here, I've got good marbling, good flecks of fat here. That means I'm gonna have a really nice sausage by the end. Combine the salt with all of the dried spices in the jar of your spice grinder. Pulse until you have a smooth powder. Mince the sage by cutting it lengthwise into strips, then cross-cutting it. Use your sharpest chef's knife for this to avoid bruising or tearing the herb. In order to make my sausage, I turn to one of my favorite kitchen tools, the food processor. What we're looking to do is not just mix the sausage, but we also want to break apart the pork and start sort of rupturing those proteins. As the pork gets worked, it's going to become sticky and gluey. That's a good thing. That's what we're actually going for with this sausage. You don't want that with a burger. That's not good. For this sausage, for this purpose, that is perfect. It's exactly what we want. We want it to be sticky so that it will form a coherent shell without any gaps in it. Combine the pork, spice mix, and sage in the bowl of your food processor fitted with the blade. Give it 7 to 10 1-second pulses until the pork balls up. Check the texture. You want it to be a smooth ball that leaves feathery little tendrils when you pull it apart. Transfer to a bowl. Notice how the sausage gets sort of sticky and malleable and a bit feathery? That's exactly what you want. That means that the proteins have been broken down, the sausage is starting to stick together, the fat has been emulsified into the sausage, but not so much that you only have a single fluid mass. This is great. The next step is to give it time just to get to know itself. Cover it, stick it in the fridge. This is gonna sit for about 24 hours. Sausage always needs a little bit of time to develop flavors. Trust me, you'll be glad that you gave it the chance. To be honest, I don't really measure out the panko for this recipe because volume and weight don't really matter. You just need enough. So I've got about a cup and a half of panko breadcrumbs. And we are going to pulverize these. Just enough that they break apart and will form a thinner, crisper shell. All right, that is 7 pulses, and it looks pretty good to me. And it has reduced in volume by a little over a third. That is because now that it is broken up, it will compact much more nicely. And that is exactly what we want for that crispy shell. It won't be as flaky and fall apart, but it'll have an even better, crisper, bite through fried texture. My eggs have sat in the fridge in water. It is still ice cold. Now it's time to peel them, see how the boil turned out. I am intending to cook 4 Scotch eggs, but I did 6 eggs. That is because I find it is always helpful to do a few extras, just in case some of them don't want to peel nicely, or in case one of them gets a little overdone for some mysterious egg reason. Eggs can be finicky and unpredictable. Cold egg that was chilled immediately after being cooked, it peels pretty easily. I'm going to wait until I am done peeling all of these eggs before I cut any of them open to see how they are cooked. The reason being is I want to take the one that peels the worst and cut that one open, sacrifice that one. If I cut open the first one and then I break extras, run out of my buffer pretty quick. All right, there's one. If I weren't worried about keeping these intact, I would be a lot more rough with them. But since I do need to be able to handle them and wrap them in sausage, I'm trying to be pretty gentle and avoid any pitting or cracking as much as possible. Yep. See, there's one that did not go well. But it does give me a chance to see that the egg is cooked pretty much perfectly. Soft, jammy. Give them a quick rinse, wash off bits of shell, and you're good to go. I'm actually going to just keep these back in the water until I need them for cooking. Yep, I've got my 4. This guy is not going to be any good. It's split open, so this is why you make extras. Once you're ready to start assembling your Scotch eggs, go ahead and prepare your frying vessel. We are deep frying these, not pan frying them, so you want some good depth. Get that on the stove while you prepare the Scotch eggs. Now we're on to assembly. The first thing you want to do is get your eggs, dry them off. They should be a little damp. What we're going to do is, I have some salted flour here. Drop your eggs in there and get them coated in flour. Gently tap off excess and set aside. We're working in stages here. First step is this, and then we will wrap the eggs in meat, followed by doing the breading before frying them. So the reason that I have started flouring the eggs is I find it forms a better connection with the sausage after it cooks. Before it cooks, it does make it a bit more of a pain in the butt to wrap them, but the end product is worth it. Here is the sausage from yesterday. We're going to be using this probably between 50 and 70 grams per egg. It all depends, depending on the egg, etc., etc. The important thing is when you get the sausage, roll it into a ball and start flattening it as much as you can. You want the sausage to be very thin, so that you have a nice thin layer of sausage. You don't want it to be a thick, chunky, chonky Scotch egg. That's not the right balance. So, with your nice, neat, thin patty, place the egg in, and then just gently start closing the sausage in and around it. Now you'll end up with flaps like this. Pinch that off and close it. You don't need the bumps. But if you processed your sausage well, or if you're using a well-processed sausage, store-bought is fine, it will stick together and you can just sort of run your fingers across the sausage, maybe pinch it together, and it will form a single smooth case. Make sure Each egg is fully encased and you don't have any gaps in the sausage. The sausage is an insulator. It acts as armor, protecting your egg from being cooked again. There we go. It's an egg wrapped in meat. If you want to roll out the sausage so that you get a nice even flat layer, get a couple pieces of wax paper and use a rolling pin to do that. So one thing I like to do is when I'm forming the sausage like this, I try to get it into a long, flat rectangle. That way I can wrap it around the equator of the egg, if I get the length right, and then just finish up the tops. And keep in mind, you don't want there to be cracks in your sausage. Your sausage is armor. You don't want cracks in the armor. You want it to be nice, smooth, and coherent. And remember, be gentle. It is still just a soft-boiled egg in there. You don't want to squeeze too hard. You could rupture the egg and that would not be good. All right, we've got 3 stations set up: salted flour, egg, and pulverized panko breadcrumbs. Just like many breaded deep fried things, we're going to go from the flour to the egg to the panko in that order, always shaking off excess after each dip. Use the wet hand, dry hand method as much as you can. I'm not real great at it, so, you know, no judgment. But the reason you do the flour is because egg is wet and doesn't want to stick to another wet thing. So by coating your food, which, you know, could be wet, coating your food in flour will dry it out or provide at least a dry surface. I like to gently squeeze just to really compact things on there. If things are looking too thin, light, crispy, you can always go in for a second dunk in the egg, followed by your breadcrumbs. That will give you a nice, thick, bouncy, crispy coating. At each stage, get the entire piece covered. You want everything to be coated in the breading. In order for that to happen, you have to get flour all over, followed by the egg, followed by panko. The 3 of those work in tandem to build your delicious deep fried crust. And with that, we are ready to start frying. With your oil up to temp, add the Scotch eggs one at a time. Use a slotted spoon or spiral strainer to lower them gently. Don't drop them. You know your oil is at a good temperature when the food immediately starts bubbling when you add it. These will cook for 5 to 6 minutes until golden brown on the outside and the sausage is just fully cooked. Once they're all loaded, go ahead and prepare your landing pad. I'm using a half-sheet tray with a cooling rack, but a cutting board lined with paper towels works just as well. Let them cook undisturbed for a couple of minutes. This will set the initial crust. Then, use your spiral skimmer or slotted spoon to gently move them around a little bit. This will keep them from sticking to the bottom and ripping a hole in the deep fried crust. Continue moving them around a little every minute or so. Check the color of the crust when you do. Aim for golden brown and delicious. Keep in mind that it will continue to darken for a couple minutes after being pulled from the fryer. It just goes another shade or 2, but if you go too dark, you'll likely end up with a lightly burnt Scotch egg. Pull the eggs once they just turn that beautiful golden color and you'll be all set. Sausage. So typically I just serve my Scotch eggs with a side salad, but my wife made a suggestion that it would be kind of nice with some hollandaise as a sauce to go with the Scotch egg. So today I'm doing a Scotch Benedict. This is just the foolproof sous vide hollandaise that I've done here on the channel. Link to that is up above. So there we go. Scotch eggs. Let's dig in. The lemony zing from the hollandaise actually plays really nicely with the breakfast sausage and that fried crust and that fried crispy breading. This egg is even actually a little on the underdone side. I don't mind that at all. I love a good runny egg yolk. I would order a Scotch Benedict. I don't know why I've never seen it on a menu. It's delicious. I forgot to get a photo. So there you go, that's the Scotch egg. Sorry about the audio and the tasting portion. I turned on the wrong microphone. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you make this at home. My goal for making these videos is that people will learn how to cook and make these dishes at home. The Scotch egg is a special one to me. It's the favorite thing I've ever had in a restaurant. Had it on my honeymoon. It's something that I hold near and dear, and I hope somebody who watches this decides to give Scotch eggs a try. They aren't as difficult as they seem to be. There are some tricky things. You need to boil your egg properly. You need to have a good sausage. The technique for assembling them can be a little fiddly, and then once you've got everything breaded and ready, honestly, it's just knowing how to deep fry and deep frying them for about 5 to 6 minutes until they're golden brown and pulling them out before they overcook. If you can do each of those individual steps, you're golden. Thank you for watching. I'm PK Sullivan. This has been Breakfast for Pancakes, and I will see you next time.